Hello and welcome to this Trash to Track. In this episode of Trash to Track we're going to be looking at this Hornby N15 Sir Dinadan loco that belonged to my father, and I remember running around our layout when I was a kid. Now this Sir Dinadan is in very good condition and not the normal type of engine I'd feature on Trash to Track, but we'll come to that later on as I'm going to upgrade this model to modern standards. Now, putting it on the track and giving it a battery test, I expect this model to be a good runner, which indeed it is, which proves that the X04 motor inside is still serviceable and still providing plenty of power. Now I'm going to strip the loco down. First off, I mistakenly removed this screw here thinking it held the body on, but all it held on was the tender drawbar, and then I realised that there's a screw underneath the cab full plate there, which if you remove, it removes the chassis from the body. Now, like I said, these models are fitted with an X04 motor, which, as is the case in this one, is a very good runner. Although they're not known for their slow speed control, and they can be quite juddery over dirty track, and they're not the best runners when they are fitted with DCC. But putting a battery across the terminals there, you can see, like I said, this model doesn't really need any work, but I am going to upgrade it. There's a new product come on the market from a guy who sells them on eBay for a motor replacement for the X04 motors that are fitted to the majority of Triang Hornby stock, and it would also work for the X03 motor as well. So removing this X04 motor, I will show you how to service this later in the video in case you've not seen one of these before. But now I'm just going to test to make sure the chassis is free rolling, which it is. And now we're going to look at this replacement model motor from Horns and Whistles Workshop. This is a 5-pole replacement motor with a flywheel to bring this model up to modern running standards. This retails at £35, which is quite a lot of money for a motor, but when you think about the upgrade, and you'll see later the performance this gives, I think it is well worth the money. So fitting this motor is simplicity itself. It simply fits in the existing lug on the chassis where the original X04 motor went, and you can see here by giving it a battery test, it is a nice, powerful and smooth running motor. What I am going to do before we fit this motor though is I'm going to service the pickups and clean the wheels and axles, as although this is proving to be a strong runner already, I honestly can't remember the last time, if ever, that this Sir Dinadan loco has had a service. If I serviced it in the past, it was well over 2 decades ago. So removing the 2 screws there, it removes the chassis keeper plate, and then the whole wiring loom was fed through the worm gear hole there, and I'm going to replace all this old Triang wire. So I'm going to unsolder the wire off the pickup strip there, and then this wire can be either discarded or kept as spares, as I'm going to keep the X04 motor in my spares lot. So I'm just going to rub the old chassis plate there with some cotton bud and methylated spirits to remove any old lubrication. And here you can see I've soldered some DCC Concepts wire onto the pickup strip so that the wiring is all new. And this goes on a certain way with this chassis keeper plate here, which is obviously used for multiple models, as there's multiple places to put the pickup strip. But once you get it in the correct place, it's just a case of putting it back where it came from and tightening the 2 brass screws. I will clean the wheels later, and before I did this, although it's not included in the footage, I did give the axles a clean out with some contact cleaner and re-lubricated the axles. The wheels on this model don't come out, they are threaded through the chassis. So to remove the wheels, I'd have to remove the one wheel and then I'd have to re-quarter it, so I didn't go to that extent this time. To fit a decoder to this model, it was simplicity itself. I simply levered the motor up slightly out of its cradle, soldered the orange and grey wires to the motor tabs, and the red and black wires will then go to track pickup. So with that new pickup wire just held out the way, I'm going to slide this brand new replacement motor into the holes where the X04 motor went. And then included in the kit is a solder tab, which you put through the brass retaining screw that you need to keep from the old motor, and then you can solder one of the pickup wires to this. So just putting that through there, everything fits nicely, holding it in place with my finger pressure there, and then just screwing that solder tab down, and that is the replacement motor fitted. It really is that simple. So here you can see I'm soldering one of the pickup wires to the solder tab, and the other wire I will link to that pickup wire that we replaced from the chassis keeper plate. So now that's all done and in place, I'm going to put this onto the test track to make sure everything works and make sure there's no short circuits. So putting the chassis on there, when I can get the front pony bogie on, I'm going to give it a battery test, and you will see now that this motor, once I get the battery correct, just look how smooth and nice that is. It's not running too great on here because I haven't cleaned this track for a while, and it is just dirty track. You will see later when it's running around my layout how smooth and nice this motor runs. So now that's all in place, I'm just going to put some lubrication on the new worm gear, as extremely dry as it's brand new. You don't need too much silicone grease, I just put a tiny amount on there with a small flat bladed screwdriver because at the time of filming I'd actually run out of cocktail sticks. And then I had a tiny amount of oil there just for the gear train. Now that that's all done, I'm going to show you guys how to quickly service an X04 motor if you've not seen one of my videos before. You remove the brushes from the commutator faceplate, which I polish up initially with a cotton bud dipped in methylated spirits. I then get a I get a toothpick and just clean out the brass grooves in between the commutator to remove any built-up carbon, as too much build-up will cause short circuits and can cause the motor to run hot and even burn out. And you can see there on this motor there is a lot of gunk in those between those plates. The commutator is then polished up with the fiberglass pencil to remove any burnt on carbon. It was given a final polish with a cotton bud and meths, as were the brushes, which were all cleaned up and made fresh, ready for putting this motor back into storage. To reassemble the motor, the brushes flick back behind the keeping spring there, making sure one side is insulated. And you can see there with the battery test that this X04 motor is a very strong performer, and I'll keep this as a spare in case I need one in the future. This digital decoder, which is a Bachmann product, will fit inside the body shell there with a small piece of black tack to keep it out of the way. And then the body shell is refitted to the chassis and making sure that all the wires that are spare off the decoder are tucked in out of the way of all the moving parts. Once that's in, you can replace the screw from underneath the foot plate there. And then we will turn our attention to cleaning the wheels and having a look at the tender of this model. Once the screw's back in place, I also have to replace this the tender drawbar piece there, which I erroneously took off. Like I said, I hadn't took this model apart before, so I genuinely thought that this screw held the body shell on. But every day's a school day, we can't know it all. But now the body's on, I just wanted to make sure there's no trapped wires, and I've actually cleaned the rails now. Let's see how well she runs. And bear in mind at this point I haven't actually cleaned the wheels of the loco, so there is some oxidisation on them, but you can see there just how nice and smooth this runs. So I'm going to give the body shell a dust off with a old paintbrush just to remove any dust and debris that has accumulated on it while it's been in my dad's loft. And then I'm going to have a quick look at the tender when there's not much work needs doing to this really. It's in relatively good condition, so I'm just going to give all the wheels a clean with a cotton bud and meths just to make sure that it's not spreading any dirt onto my dad's layout when it eventually goes back to him. The wheels were turned by hand and there wasn't any need for the fiberglass pencil this time really, as the muck build-up on these wheels was very light. And you can see there just how much muck has actually come off those three wheels on that side. It was now that I actually encountered a problem with this Sir Dinadan when I was cleaning the wheels with a fiberglass pencil with the loco in the cradle. All of a sudden, having put some torque on the model, polishing the wheels up, the model actually lost traction. The motor was spinning but the wheels weren't going round. So something had obviously gone amiss with the new motor inside. So what I did was, you could hear it rattling, so I took the screw out again to release the chassis. And it turned out that the worm gear had actually fallen off the drive shaft. I don't believe that this is a manufacturing error. I believe this was my mistake, as when I inverted the motor to solder the DCC decoder onto it, I only prized the flywheel end out of the cradle, which pushed the worm gear along the drive shaft a bit, which has obviously made it fall off. When I was when I was cleaning the wheels with it inverted in the loco cradle. It was a simple case of just removing this screw again and then pushing the worm gear back onto the drive shaft. And since then the model has had about an hour's running on my layout, and no other problems have come about. But I am 99% certain this problem was my own doing, as like I said, when I levered the motor out to solder the wire on, I must have pulled the motor shaft and released the worm gear. Any further problems with this motor in the future, I will do an update video. Now I've got this pot of southern green paint in my paint tub, and it just so happens that it's almost an exact match for what Hornby have used on this model. So with a very steady hand and a very flat paintbrush, I'm going to just touch in the paint on these cylinder blocks here, which has worn away over time. The white lining on the ends was kept, and it was basically both sides were hand repainted, just to get the nice deep green colour that this loco's in. So it's not really much of a trash to track, this one. It's more of a motor upgrade, but it is really worth doing it, and I will invest in a couple of these motors for a couple of models I've got for upcoming trash to tracks, either this year or next. But you can see here just how nicely that new motor actually runs in this model. And putting my fingers there, it has plenty of torque, so I don't envisage this having any difficulty pulling trains. I'm really pleased with how this childhood model of my dad's and mine, I remember this running around as a kid, and obviously with the name of Sir Dinadan, Dan being my own name, this was a personal favourite. And it was the only model we had with smoke deflectors, so it made it stand out from the Flying Scotsmans and that we used to have. But now we have Sir Dinadan on the DCC programming track, and I'm just showing you here the smooth, slow running that is achievable with this new motor. Like I say, if you want one of these, you have to go on eBay, and it's Horns and Whistles Workshop. I'm going to stop talking now so you can just hear how quiet this motor really is. I think you'll agree that the upgrade in running qualities is well worth the £35 for this new motor. If you've got a loco you'd like to see featured on a future episode of Trash to Track, please email me at the email address seen on screen now, and we'll have a look at getting it sent over, and it might feature in a Trash to Track all of its own. Thanks for watching Trash to Track again. Please like, share and subscribe. Leave some comments to let me know what you think of this motor upgrade, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.